if you want to go faster, slow down. If you want to go faster, by going faster, I mean achieve more and accomplish more better. Slow down, because that's the way you'll actually get more done. You actually you'll do it more accurately. You get the information you want, and you'll take people with you. So there is a tendency, I think, for young pilots to rush. To think, okay, we're time limited. We've only got so much fuel. We've only got, we've got all things going on with air traffic control and all sorts of things. But the key is really to slow down, and you will actually achieve more and better.
So I am joined by none other than Chris Smith, all the way from Australia. And before we even get into this fantastic book that I have here, there's a very important thing I saw on probably the second page. And he loves 70s and R&B music. So now we have to have a little talk about that. So Chris, firstly, welcome to the show. But I'm curious now, who do you like? Now, I wasn't born during that time, but like, I feel like my father and then my relatives, like, just brainwashed me with that music. So who do you like?
I absolutely love music. I just love music, and it just takes me away. I like everyone from Eric Clapton to the Rolling Stones to Anita Baker to, all the really big ones, and the American artists are just, they just take you to another level. I have a broad music taste, but it's one of the lessons I actually talk about with people, that you find out what makes you tick. And for me, music like that just takes me away instantly, straight away. So if I need to de-stress or do anything, I'll turn that music on and I'm just somewhere else. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, the same thing here. And I'm curious, do you think music has played an influence in terms of how you went about your career? And what I mean by that is, for instance, for me, Miles Davis was a huge inspiration for me, and just how he was very creative, always reinventing himself, and had a very eclectic mix of inspirations that he put out into his music and his bandmates. And it's something that I think about when I'm either doing a podcast or I'm writing, or even if I'm just consulting and advising with people, is to think about all the different influences and to think of it as a form of art.
It is totally a form of art. Herbie Hancock would be another one, all these fantastic musicians. The answer to that is, did it influence my career? Absolutely. Because music is like a poetry with sound, that's how I feel that. It changes your mood, and I've traveled in all sorts of places, and it takes me to those places. Now that I actually finished my active flying career, I can still go back to those places. In my mind, sounds will trigger a place in Japan or in Outback Australia. It will actually trigger those memories for me, because I was listening to that music at that time. So it's almost like reliving it. Miles Davis, boy, you are picking the good musicians right there. And they really are. And it is art. It's pure art. But it can be artistic for people who cook, for artists, for musicians, for writers. Writing a story, for example, is like painting a picture. To start with a blank canvas, or if someone wants to write a story, it's a blank bit of paper. Absolutely.
So, so you were a pilot for a long time, and you did a whole host of other things that we'll get into. But I'm wondering, as a kid, were you flying airplane toys around, just flying around the house or something? What led to this inspiration to be a pilot?
Yes, it's so interesting, isn't it? When you look back, the answer to that is yes. And I was imagining, honestly, what it would be like to be higher. And I guess my greatest inspiration was probably my father from a flying point of view. I mean, he was end of World War II. His eyesight wasn't good enough for him to go flying there, but he adored flight. And he always encouraged us. And I've got all these fantastic books of his. He's passed away now, but all these fantastic books. You could see the love of flight in him. And he really encouraged us to do whatever we want to do. He was so, and my mother too, they're both inspirational. And honestly, Julian, one of my earliest memories as a young boy, maybe 7 or 8 years of age, is sitting around our dining room table at dinner time thinking, well, anything's possible, So how lucky am I to have an influence like that, truly?
Yeah, I mean, that is that's a very lucky thing to have, this anything is possible mentality. And I sort of had that growing up, just like where I think it's that exposure, or just that one little seed of belief in you, just can make all the difference, from going the wrong direction to the right direction. Do you think that let me see, with the being a pilot and everything, I was afraid of heights for so long. And
Yeah.
what is it about flying that is that's just so exhilarating to you?
So much of it, Julian. Honestly, my father described it once again as another dimension. Yeah, that's what he said. And boy, was he right. It really, you get a planned view of the world, and I still have a romance in me about flight. It's more than flight to me; it's a journey. We're going places. And I write in my book about one of my favourite places of flying. This is in chapter 41, which is north of New Guinea and south of Guam.
Mm-hmm.
And about 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's a fairly romantic chapter, I guess, but that's the place where we fly through particular cloud formations, and you have to duck around. It's like kelp forest under the ocean. You have to duck around them, because they're a little bit rough to fly through. But what I love about it is that we're sitting up there with 300 people behind us. There's everyone's calm. There's no arguing, no bias, no prejudice, no anything. Everyone's just getting on really so well here. So I guess there's an answer for you right there. I just love the camaraderie, and the camaraderie extends to the air traffic controllers who we're talking to, who we work with. You'd be surprised just how much liaison we have with those people, with the cabin crew operating as a team. And I just love, to be honest, I just love mixing with people. I really do. And so when I build my crew, I don't want them as just as crew. We're together to achieve this and to have a good time and if I build the right team, and I don't talk team as much anymore, I talk community now, Julian. They'll be there for me when things don't go well, and occasionally that happens. I want them to open up to me. So I just love the feeling of building that environment because what we do matters. Things are going fine most of the time, but when they don't, they can really go south very quickly. And I love the views clearly. The dawns and the sunsets are to behold. Volcanic activity you see, beautiful parts of the world, and parts of the world that shouldn't be as they are. They should be way better than they are. And I talk about that in the book too. Because and I love it because the higher you go, the more fascinating it actually is. Sometimes I would still be up there thinking, goodness me, it's minus 50 degrees C outside. How extraordinary is man to be able to create something that can keep us all so safe and comfortable here.
Yeah. When I'm thinking about it, and your book kind of reads like I would say there's leadership lessons in there, but it's also like an adventure that I'm almost like reliving the experiences with you as you're describing it, just like when we were talking about Japan and just going through there. I've never been to Japan, but I can put more of a picture in my head as you're kind of describing the people and the culture a little bit in there. One of the things that interests me about being a pilot is that, and you make this point in the book, is that a lot of times, unlike in business, the leader, the CEO, the founder, they make a mistake. Everyone doesn't necessarily have to suffer for it, or themselves. I'm sorry, they don't have to necessarily suffer for it. Whereas when you mentioned when you were flying, that if you make a mistake, everyone suffers, including yourself. And I thought that was a very interesting point right there in terms of like the stakes are high for every single person involved. What are some other common, I would say, things about pilots that we, the general public, wouldn't think of as much in terms of what it takes to really perform as a pilot?
It's very interesting. It's important. There are a number of issues here. That's a really wonderful question. To set the right gradient, we call it a flight deck gradient between the captain, obviously, and the rest of the crew. If it's too steep, then that will just shut people down. They won't talk to us. They won't open up and give us all of their skills, all of their information that we really do need. We need them to tell us everything, even if we don't really want to hear it, without fear. There are lots of lessons I've learned. One of these, and it applies in life as well, Julian, is if you want to go faster, slow down. If you want to go faster, by going faster, I mean achieve more and accomplish more better. Slow down, because that's the way you'll actually get more done. You actually you'll do it more accurately. You get the information you want, and you'll take people with you. So there is a tendency, I think, for young pilots to rush. To think, okay, we're time limited. We've only got so much fuel. We've only got, we've got all things going on with air traffic control and all sorts of things. But the key is really to slow down, and you will actually achieve more and better. I think one of the difficulties, I guess, with a pilot's life is the shift work. You learn more about you and how you work at your peak and where your troughs are as well. You've got time zone changes, you've got shift work. It's probably shift work on steroids. So you learn a lot about yourself. There's a lot of self-awareness sitting in here, and how effective or ineffective I've been on a particular day or a particular time, So I think that would be it. You learn a lot about yourself, because what you do matters. It's critical, and we're not the only walk of life in which that applies. But it's a great point you raise, because if we make things affect us, even on the surface of it doesn't, then we're going to gain great respect from those people who we work with. In our walk of life, we're in there too. So if something's going wrong, it's going to affect us too. Perhaps if we're on the operating table, and it's not to diminish anything that any other walk of life does, but if the operation doesn't go so well, we're not going to be directly affected by that. So I think that's probably there's some of the keys for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, and that makes a lot of sense. And one of the other things in the book was you mentioned that altitude plus power equals performance. And I guess you were talking a little bit about the gray and how to operate in that. And so I would love to expound on that a little more, because I think that is something that, whether it's dealing with our health or whether it's dealing with our companies or going up the ranks in corporate, a lot of these things have gray. It's not linear, and it's not going to be black or white. So what was the inspiration behind coming up with that?
That's right. And that is a fundamental aviation principle. The attitude of the aircraft, the amount of power you've got means you're going to get a certain performance. But it's absolutely applicable in business and in our own life. Julian, I think we're witnessing the decline of the purely commercially oriented leadership. People are wanting more, particularly post-COVID, but they're wanting more out of it here. And we've got to know how to respond to that. So share price increases, good, profits increasing, that's good. But they tend to be temporary, because if we don't do things right by people, that's only going to be a short-term hit. It might be a couple of years or so, but that's good commercial management. It's not leadership. So leadership for me, the really, really good leaders stand for something. They stand for something, and if I take someone like, let's say, David Attenborough. Now, people may not associate him with leadership, but he is extremely influential globally. I think we've all got to take moral ownership of David Attenborough, because he lives his life for the environment, and everybody listens to him. But the other key to him is his humility. He is so humble, people listen, and that is key here. If you're humble, people will listen. They will speak to you. They will open up and tell you things, and that's what you need in terms of leadership. And you take another leap, and I think David Attenborough would be in this, Mahatma Gandhi would be in this, and a few others, perhaps Barack Obama. They become iconic. They become iconic leaders. So they don't. Therefore, their attitude gives them that power, and then they'll get the result. But they're not. It's not about them. It's about other people. They are genuinely there to make things better. So the true leaders are there to make things better. They're not just there to follow a formula or an organizational chart or whatever it may be, a model. They try to make things better, and that's why they get such an incredible following.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned here that the decline of the commercial leadership, And so, and what's going to replace? What type of leadership is replacing that? Is that what you call the cultural leadership?
Yes, yes, that's my view. Because people do want more. They don't want to be dictated to. Yes, because I don't think there is a very large portion of the population who are willing to pay a full price for anything anymore, and everyone wants a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. But you know what? There's a human cost to that. It doesn't matter whether if they're talking airfares or we're selling ladders or lawnmowers. It doesn't matter. There's a human cost to this. And ultimately, people have reached the point, I think, where they're thinking, well, what's in this for me? And so if you've got execs, and I'm quite happy for execs to earn really good pay, no problem at all. But when you get the extremes, people are thinking, well, hang on a second, that's more about you. It's not about us. It's gone too far. Really, we need to temper that and settle that down a bit, because, are you in here for the company and the greater good, or are you just to see how much money you can get? One of the questions I like to, and I think should be asked of the executives, and don't worry, I'm not anti-exec at all, but sometimes the extremes are, you can sense it here that people have just had enough of the extremes. The question is, if we paid you $5 million instead of $10 million, would you make lesser quality decisions? Or if that's the case, then maybe you should look elsewhere, because we still think $5 million is a lot of money, So, and I think we really need to be asking that of boards as well. It's just, where's your value set really lie? Is it for us as well? Because you get us on side, then we'll drive the share price for you. We'll look after you.
Mm-hmm. So part of what you do now, to my understanding, is also you work at organizations now as well, and bring some of these principles in there. And kind of to go along with this last point made, is the thing of engagement and building a culture. So as you see this now in this modern business world, what are some of the common culture building mistakes that you're seeing?
That's so true. In fact, I'm working with a company right now who had that very same problem. They said, well, we were giving people, free this and free that, but the people are still complaining. Because if you're giving people money, yes, then if it requires the money to do more than their normal work, well, there's something wrong here, and they're working for the money. And it's extrinsic anyway, because if you take the money away, you take the inducement away, you take the performance away. So money ultimately does not work, and people become desensitized to levels of remuneration anyway, Julian. Prizes don't work. They might work for a little bit, but with maybe a young person or a new person, but ultimately we want to know what the culture of the place is really like. And people, seriously, they just want to have an open, honest relationship and a free relationship. And the way to really do that at the basic level is to think ahead to when maybe people are, say, 70 and they're sitting around with their grandchildren talking about their career. Of course, they will want to have been a part of a very successful, profitable, growing organisation. But what they'll really want to be thinking about is all the really great memories all the way through in their own careers within the organisation. Associate that, and you're 90% the way there to getting a pure, a true engagement, really. That's what it's about. So prizes, in fact, if you have a cynical workforce, if you then give prizes, they'll just think you're trying to buy them off, to buy their loyalty. And it doesn't work. They don't want that falseness anymore.
Mm-hmm. That almost seems like empty calories, because I think at times you see someone that's adding like various like amenities to the office, but it's not necessarily really affecting the people and their well-being. It's almost like you're trying to cover a flesh wound with a very small Band-Aid when you do those types of things.
That's a perfect description. It's exactly what it is. And they see it as that. People are smart. They get that. I'll use that analogy myself, but it's actually it's actually so true. They want truth now. They want reality, and people have reassessed. And I'm glad. As a society, we're not running a business. But in business we can run a society as well. We can run our own society, and that's how the legendary companies operate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think you take Virgin, for example, with Richard Branson. You know, highly successful. But his principle is, look after the staff first, and they'll look after the customers. So he flips things on its head quite a lot. Puts himself out there. So there are some really iconic companies that operate that way, but it's human-centered. So we can have the hardware right, we have the software right, but if we forget about the human beings, that you've lost that pillar of the three-legged stool. You really have, and you'll never know, Julian, what top performance is, because too often, if people are hamstrung by a lack of engagement, they'll give what I term minimum plus. They'll do the minimum plus a little bit to keep them safe, to keep their job secure. You won't get top performance.
You think that's the biggest block, the biggest chokehold with companies in terms of getting top performance? Do you think it's that particular thing right there?
Oh, totally. It is the issue. We want people to be free and just let them go. And sometimes, yes, within the organisational chart, and particularly if it's a steep chart, it actually holds people back from expressing what they really want to express, because people look at their boxes and they're the specialists in those fields, but the lines are reporting lines. They should be relationship lines. We need to find out exactly what's really going on. And of course, the really steep organisational charts tend to sometimes bring out undesirable traits in people, because there are fewer and fewer jobs as we go up the ladder. And so people become a bit self-protective. Maybe I'll try and hold this person back because they're a threat to me, and I want the top job. So I favour a much flatter structure, absolutely, and let people run, even if they have to give us news that we don't want to hear. That's okay.
Absolutely. I jotted this down. You mentioned talking to your grandkids and thinking about and how someone should think about their career as they're talking back. And this is something that I actually thought about, and it led to a lot of career decisions for me. Is that I took myself 50 years from now and thought about how would I describe my career and how I wanted to describe it. And so I'm curious with you now, with grandkids and things like that, and younger generation, how would you describe your career to them in maybe just a couple of sentences? What would you tell them?
I'm so fortunate because I started studying architecture and quantity surveying, because it was either flying or that. And because my parents had a building business, and I thought, okay, so I was somewhat leaning into that, I guess, from a safety point of view. So I started studying that. Within 6 months, I knew that wasn't for me. I knew I had to fulfill my dream. So I took that risk, I did. It's a non-standard job, really. And I had no idea what was awaiting me. And boy, oh boy, and I'm glad, because if we know what's coming, we're just living a script in life, Julian. I like the fact that we don't know. And so when you're encouraged to take those calculated risks, you become better at getting through the stumbling blocks, things that don't work. And honestly, and to extract so much out of your career. You could go through this career if you want and not push the boundaries, not try other things. But fortunately, with I guess my nature and my upbringing, I was challenged to do that, and I managed to extract a whole lot out of it. So I can now look back at that young man and think, thank goodness you followed your dream. Thank goodness for that. There's nothing sadder than someone who doesn't do that, doesn't try.
I got a question on that. How do you encourage people to do that? And the reason why I asked is because a lot of times, kind of what we talked about at the very beginning, where you had that influence at the dinner table, I had that exposure to seeing different people do things that I didn't even know was possible. For people who don't have that, how do you how do you do that then?
It's very interesting. And here's my counselling coming out, I guess. But our attitudes and our views on life are set really young, within a few years of birth, really. And once they're set, they're pretty well locked in, Julian, and only another major experience will change it. Take, for example, a person who's just spent all their life trying to make money and accumulate houses and wealth and all the rest of it, and then they get sick. It's maybe their 50s or something. And then those houses and cars become valueless. And then they start to resent them for what they represent, and which is waste, really. Where I could have spent time doing other things. But that can apply both ways. So if people haven't been exposed to that, they can be exposed to a really good experience to think, hang on a second, that's changing my attitude here. I can actually do this. I used to fly with a person years ago who said, I never get optimistic. I never tell my kids to be optimistic because then they won't be disappointed. And I thought, wow, that is just so depressing for me and negative for me. But if you show them what is possible, and I mean, really show them, and that's what I do with my students at the university and elsewhere, to show them and just talk to them genuinely and give them that exposure. They really need to see it, actually see it in action. And so I guess that's why I wrote my book, as you'll probably read, primarily for my kids, and it went from there because I wanted them to see, hang on, there's more to dad than just dad, And these are my views on life. These are my experiences. These are the risks I took. Some may not have worked, but boy, did I learn from them. So I'm trying to expose other generations, if you like, to success, ultimate success, what success can be for you, whether it's in music, architecture, accounting, it doesn't matter. The key really is to think early on, what do I want to achieve here? What actually do I want to achieve? Why do I want to do that? Because you don't want to get to you don't want to be a CEO and then find out, hang on, it's not what I expected.
Yeah,
it really didn't tick the box for me. I wanted to do good in the world. Well, so we need to talk a lot about that, and hopefully that will influence people, the younger people, to be enthused, to actually inspired to do that, because they can. Anyone can do this.
Yes, I love that you kind of had that in mind when you were talking about it, because one of the things I talk about when it comes to health and even just this podcast and everything, it's a living document that should hopefully be around forever, as long as we got internet and everything. But then also I think about, there's big pillars in life where I always tell people that their health is not just about themselves, but it's about the three big pillars a lot of times, which is our business / career, it's our community, and then it's our family. So I bring that up because I'm curious, as you're talking about your kids and writing the book, how has the being a pilot, being in this aviation industry, what influences has that had on you and being a father, and how does it, made you better at that?
I learned, I love flight, absolutely adored it and still do. But also learned about myself, and I learned that I just love the interaction with people. And I love being in a situation where you can actually provide or create the environment where they can be their level best. And that's why I went back to university and extra studying, started counselling. And then I thought, no, we can do so much more here. People need not be restricted by this. So I got into some depth. And what it taught me was I basically loved expanding people's horizons and to have that go. So I started the mental health programs for the airline here, and I went to the CEO basically and said, look, I think we need to do this because we can get so much more from people and look after them. So we set them up in Japan and Singapore and New Zealand and Australia. Through that, I met so many people, and life changed for me, Julian. I never knew anyone in Japan until 2012, and now some of my best friends are Japanese. So honestly, that would be my response to that. And I think from that point of view, that the humanistic point of view of leadership has helped enormously, because we need to ask ourselves, what do I really want? At the end of my career, do I want to have the respect of the masses, or do I want to just have the respect of just the handful of people around me? Because I think if we have the respect of the vast majority of people from any strata, any walk of life, to me that's real success. It really is. That's you've done something good for the world. That's what I think.
And so one other chapter to talk about here is, you mentioned power and authority versus influence. And I'm imagining here that I would imagine, maybe I'm on the right track here, that power and authority maybe is an old form of leadership, whereas influence is a more effective form of leadership today, or has it always been that way?
No, I'd go along with that. And in fact, I think it becoming even more so. If we only have power or authority by virtue of a role or a title that we hold. We soon find out how good a job we've done, Julian, when we don't have that role anymore and we don't have control or influence over anybody anymore. Think of the organisational chart.
Mm-hmm.
If we've done a good job, or if we haven't done a good job, then people won't give us the time of day when we pass them in the street because we have no control over them anymore. If you've done a good job, we'll have something way more powerful, and that's influence. We'll be listened to even when we don't have that, when we've retired or left or done something else. And the big leaders have that. They have influence primarily through their humility. So why not gain the influence now while we're in the position, while we've got that power or authority? Why not do that? I draw the parallel, Julian, of people who don't have to exercise their power or authority because they've got influence. Mm-hmm. In the book, say a professional boxer, I'm not sure who's read that bit. I often admire some of those people who are very powerful, say physically, but they don't have to exercise because they know they can defeat the aggressor anyway. They know that, so they're just too good for that. That mm-hmm. Occasionally they might have to just, and a powerful manager may have to exercise a little, just drop that hint. Hang on, we need to do this. But they're so influential that they don't have to exercise their power authority at all. They just influence other people.
You mentioned being a proponent of mental health, helping people expand their horizons. And then also in the book, you mentioned something about getting rid of the mask that we walk around with. And for a lot of people that you see now, what are maybe, I don't know, one or two of the common things that a lot of leaders struggle with in terms of removing that mask and showing a quote unquote proverbial chink in the armor or something? Because I know it's something that's tough for me to do, is to show that I struggle with something or to open up, because you're so worried about what they're going to think of you. Is this going to make you look weaker and all this types of stuff?
Yeah, that's right. We all wear a mask, we all do it. So it's all about managing our image, Julian, isn't it? And we're afraid you nail it, then it will be seen as weak. But showing some vulnerability means people will respect you enormously because they'll relate to you. They'll just say, oh, well, I really respect that person because mm-hmm. they're just like me. They're just coming off a higher base. That's so I can relate and I'll open up to them. So yes, they are afraid. They're afraid to drop that. They're afraid to give because that may not come back. They need to take that chance. So they put a mask up that, hang on, I'm the leader. Yep, I've got it all under control here. Well, there's no such thing. Truly, I need my crew and the departments I've worked for and those companies that I've set up to be able to, they're the specialists. They're not me. I just gather the information. I'm a specialist in my field, but I gather the information, listen, ask, get the information, and then make my decision. Asking is power. Telling people what to do will just shut them down. So that they need to, practice that I'm talking about the leaders here, and drop that mask and learn that people will open up like you wouldn't believe the moment you do that and show that degree of humility. It's such a powerful thing, and it's showing great strength as a human. So yes, they put the mask up for those sorts of reasons, holding the status. They will gain the status genuinely. You don't have to force that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I saw a quote here that I have down here, and it's a little bit of a different subject. It's, if we're going to have families, children, we owe it to them to devote at least part of our lives to making the world a better place. And so where did this philosophy / viewpoint come from?
That's right. Now I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, and I've mm-hmm. two girls and a boy and 3 granddaughters. And, Juliana, I honestly, they have been brought up to expect that they can do anything they want. They have a right to that, but to be streetwise enough to know that people will, they're not, the rest of the world isn't there yet. So they have a right to be not stereotyped. And I guess maybe where did it come from? I guess through some hardship as well. I mean, I didn't have a straightforward career. I was in and out of some roles and jobs from time to time because companies would go broke or something would happen, and then the children, you might have trouble paying the school fees, all those sorts of things. It adds up. So some hardship actually is valuable. It's scary at the time. You do come out the other side. It makes you realise what you're made of, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But the direct effect it's having on your children as well. How much information do I release to them? We can't burden them with adults' problems. And I don't have a right to actually, I've learned that, you don't have a right to actually rule their lives for them. They did not ask to be here, but I've got a responsibility to look after them. And I want to make the world better for them. They didn't, to me, it's a selfish thing to be just having children because I want them.
Mm-hmm.
I have a responsibility to these children to make things better because I'm not going to be here forever. So I want it to be better for them. Maybe it's come through my humanistic background. My parents were by demonstration, I guess. They showed us how to have a successful business life, a family life, and to contribute to society. They were heavily into charitable causes as well. So I think the influence was at a very young age as well. It was just inculcated into me, Julian, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's it's almost like at times, like for me, I say success is an obligation, or to really do your potential it's an obligation. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the people that you came after, and those things, and the people that are going to come after you as well, to kind of set that example. And speaking of that, a lot of times when we talk about a leader, we always get caught up on the title, and we look at that. And I like where you said that anyone can be a leader. Anyone can be a leader. But do you feel like it's a calling to be a leader, or is it something that just naturally happens?
For a lot of people, it is natural. No question. What I want people to have a think about is whether they can be that too. And to be a leader, you can be anywhere on the organisational chart, and you find that you really influential people can be somewhere in the middle or down the bottom. It doesn't actually matter. It's really about influencing in where you're at, because not everyone wants to be a CEO. So being a leader to me does not equal CEO. I don't have to be a CEO to be a leader. I don't have to be a chief operating officer to be a leader, because often those people are looking for guidance from below. They are asking for you can't expect the leader to know everything, and I don't always agree that the culture always starts at the top. Not really. What I've learned is they tend to appreciate feedback and help from below. So you are leading from below. So what I want people to have a think about is that perhaps you can lead. Just think about what leadership actually is. Leadership is about making something better, that you too can lead in your own field, in your own life, right where you're at. Don't worry about the stereotype chief executive officer to be a leader.
Absolutely. We're halfway into, a little over halfway into 2024 now. And this may be a challenging question to boil down to just one or two things. But in today's world as it is now, what would you say is the one or two most important qualities that leaders really need to embody right now in today's current climate?
We need to be, it has to be a humanistic profile from now on. That's my view. I'm often asked, or sometimes asked, what is the world's biggest problem? And I ask people that question. The world's biggest problem to me is pointless, damaging argument, Julian. So if the leader can be a person who does that, who can diminish that, we'll make a massive difference here, because most argument is not constructive at all. And I'm talking about from the household through organisations to globally. We're seeing it everywhere right now, and most of it needn't be. So that to me would be a quality that probably most people don't think about, but is to placate a lot of this pointless stress that exists. It just needn't be. including in our own lives. That's what I think. So, that would be the quality I'd be looking for in leadership now, and that quiet strength, the quiet, calm strength. Because, there's a lot of turmoil going on at the moment, but we really need people we can aspire to be like, and they're not the big dictators.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. They're not the ones. That's quite cowardly, I think, to be a dictator like that.
Absolutely.
So we need that calm strength, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned changing things around us and taking care of that first and foremost. And there's a quote in here that I just opened up, and it's change things around you and your impact multiplies. And then also those around you will be inspired. And I think a lot of times we think that we don't have much control or that we don't have much impact because I may not have the title, I may not have the accolades, but you actually do have more impact than you think because your influence is somebody around you. And so that can ultimately be the spark. And so I think that's a lot of times kind of what you're talking about as well on even just writing this book.
Definitely. The little things are the big things, in truth, Julian. And people are watching you, particularly your family. They're watching you anyway. Your children are watching you. You're watching how you behave, how you conduct yourself in circumstances, and it is so powerful for them. And your friends, your neighbourhoods, be someone they can aspire to be like, honestly. And it really does multiply on a local level and on a bigger level. People are looking for that. People want to be looked after, Julian, at all stages, whether a child or at school or in a business or our governments. We want our governments to look after us, and we get a bit upset when they don't. We want to be felt to be safe. So we don't have to be at that level. But honestly and truly, you'll find that the respect for you will multiply rapidly, if we just start doing be someone they aspire to be like. And that's just within your own family, your own environment, your own school, wherever it may be, honestly, your own company.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what does success mean to you?
That's a beautiful question. And I think there are a few ingredients to that. From a business point of view, if you like, or a work point of view, again, for me, having the respect of the masses is very, very, very important to me. That is success right there, because it means the majority of people, no matter what level they're at, have really regarded what you've done well. Even if you weren't the CEO, it doesn't matter. You've made things better for them. It's had an effect on them. And when the most junior people come up and say, gee, well, isn't that what a beautiful thing that is? So from that point of view, that would mean an awful lot to me. From a family point of view, clearly you want them to be safe and happy, optimistic, not needed, especially optimistic in a difficult world, and strong enough to know that they can look after themselves and have a beautiful life and actually raise children themselves in the same fashion. So it's about building a family is just strong. It doesn't mean it's going to be without troubles, but truly one that is there's a lot of love in that family, and have wonderful friends. And see the world, as the wonderful place it is. It's not for so many people, but the truth is it is for a lot as well. But we need to devote some of our life to making it better for those people who aren't as fortunate.
Mm-hmm. And how would you like to be remembered when they're talking about you? What are they going to say about Chris?
Julian, I really would just like to think that I made a difference, made things a bit better. Yes, I would. What more can we ask, really, if in our later years we made things better and they lived a life that others could aspire to be like? And my mother was like that. She was 99 when she passed away last year, and she lived life to the full. My father, he came from a difficult upbringing, and he was a man I just admire so much because he achieved so much, and he was a gentle man. So I think I'd like to think that I could mirror some parts of both of them and have made a positive difference to the world, I think, yes.
Mm-hmm. And the last question here is, if someone comes up to you in a coffee shop and they ask you, what are 1 to 3 things that I can do today to become a better leader, what would you tell them?
Oh, okay. The first thing is listen, ask, ask, ask. Don't tell. I would say that. That would be one. The second one would be if someone is affecting you, it tells you more about you than them. Remember that. It doesn't mean you're wrong, but it means you've reached your limit with that person, the issue, or just reached my limit. Maybe should hand over to someone else to handle this issue at the moment because I'm not up to it, and maybe seek some assistance myself. The third one I would say, and there are just so many here, Julian, but the third one I'd say is what I call the paradox. So the paradox for me is accepting someone else's right to their view, even if it's totally counter to yours. It may be horrific to you, but we're trying to get a result. But the moment you accept their right to their view, that is the moment you may start to turn them in your favour, that they'll start thinking, hang on a second, at least that person respects me enough and we can start to negotiate, we can start to talk. Because that's what the really big leaders are doing going around the world every day, Julian. You know, they're just trying to keep a lid on things in the Middle East and everywhere else. But it doesn't mean they can solve it, but it does mean that they can actually get an answer. They're trying to get a result here. And not everyone you work with or who works for you is going to be on the same page. But that's a key. Just accept their right to their view, even if it may be horrific. But at least we need to get a result and not argue about this. So that'd be 3 keys I would give.
And that's a beautiful way to wrap up this conversation. Listeners, viewers out there, go get this book that's in my hand, Leadership at 43,000 Feet. Fantastic book. Awesome book cover, well designed. I really enjoyed. I'm almost done with it, and it's been a fantastic read. So it definitely, any type of leader out there, it needs to be on your bookshelf. It's also very inspiring, and it's a good adventure as well. It's like you're traveling around the world with him as well. So with that said, Chris, where can listeners keep up with you at and learn more about you?
I have my website, which is aculturalleadership.com. My email address is on there, aculturalleadership@gmail.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and the books through Amazon and all the good bookstores. So, but I can send books out through my website as well. So, yeah, it'd be lovely to hear from people, Julian. Thank you.
Awesome to hear. Awesome to hear. And listeners, before I do my send off, I'll read another sentence and another reminder for you from the book is good things, big things. They're not just for other people. They're for you too. And so until next time, stay awesome, be limitless. And as always, go be the CEO of your health and your life. Peace.